Good evening. This is Pastor Mike of Southern Oregon. Let me go ahead and go to the board so we get that out of the way. I'm Pastor Mike of the Remnant Church, R-E-M-N-A-N-T Church. Pastor Michael, M-I-C-H-E-L without the A. Benjamin's Jr. I go by Pastor Mike because a lot of people mispronounce that, my actual first name. And I run a Facebook Truth Ministry, and there are sites there. These recordings will show up on those Facebook sites and also on YouTube. Okay. What I'm going to do now, we're testing out a new microphone, and we just got it, and make sure that's working okay. And I thought we might as well go ahead and, well, as we do this test, we'll go ahead and use the time wisely. This recording is going to be about abortion. Where is it going? It's not going to be a long recording. It's going to be rather short. We're recording it on February the 1st, 2019. The code number will be code 2019V for video 0003. Recently in the media, we had heard that in New York, it was about a week ago, they passed a law called the Reproductive Health Act, allowing abortion up to the point of birth. Now, in connection with this, Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York, along with others, celebrated the event. Ben Shapiro stated that 7 states now have similar legislation. Of course, I stand against laws like that. I wasn't in favor of abortion in the first place, and now it's all the way up to aborting unborn children up to the point of birth. So you can imagine how I must feel about that. I'm going to talk about it a little bit here. As you know, I published a 2-part treatise on the subject of abortion at my Facebook sites. That was under code 218A0045. That was back in on March 15th of 2018. I'm going to read real quickly. There's only 4 verses here. What the Bible has to say about what it means, to abort a child that hasn't been born yet. How the Bible looks at it. In Jeremiah 1:5, it says, "Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. And before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee and ordained thee a prophet unto the nations." Well, that shows that God knows us while we're still in the womb. And he says that he forms these infants in the womb and sanctifies them and knows them. Then in Isaiah 44:2 it says, "Thus saith the Lord that made thee and formed thee in the womb, which will help thee. Fear not, O Jacob, my servant, and thou Jeshurun, whom I have chosen." See, he chooses people in the womb before they're even born. The next verse that I'm going to read from is Isaiah 49:1. These are the words of the Savior, Yeshua himself. "Listen, O isles, unto me, and hearken, ye people from far. The Lord hath called me from the womb. From the bowels of my mother hath he made mention of my name." Here again, the Savior himself is talking about the same issues that we are formed in the womb, and God knows us, and it's not something to just be terminated because we would like to do that for whatever reasons we may want to do that. I know I've spoken before about there being various possibly legitimate reasons to terminate an unborn fetus. I'm not going to get into that now. I'm just going to go on to the next verse. This is from Isaiah 49:5. "And now saith the Lord that formed me from the womb to be his servant, to bring Jacob again to him. Though Israel be not gathered, ye shall be glorious in the eyes of the Lord, and my God shall be my strength." These should be sufficient to let us understand, that the Lord knows us in the womb. He formed us in the womb. He sanctifies us to some purposes in the womb. It's important that we keep a clear concept of that in our minds. Now, I realize there's people, they're not believers. They don't believe that. They don't believe in the Bible. They don't believe there's a God. I hesitate to say I understand that. I really have very little understanding for people who don't believe in God. But, you know, I do acknowledge that we do have free will. Thereby, when people exercise that free will, some believe and some don't. I get that. I'm going to read something that I wrote in the treatise that I wrote about abortion, and let you consider the things that I had written there. Clearly, my friends, God knows us from the womb, and in various cases he has chosen people from the womb where he formed us through his creation of the DNA molecule, etc., to serve and function in some purpose of importance and consequence. We have no right to abort a life formed by the hand of God himself in the womb. Can you imagine if the following people had been aborted? Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, King David, Moses, Yeshua, the Savior himself, the Apostle Peter, the Apostle John, the Apostle Matthew, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, Mozart, Dwight D. Eisenhower, M.K. Gandhi, Louis Pasteur, Albert Einstein, Chester Nimitz, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, William F. Billy Graham, Helen Keller, and many, many others I have not mentioned. Some pro-choice proponents may be quick to dismiss such an argument, but, my friends, if any of those important individuals, as well as an endless list of others not mentioned here, had never been born, we would have a very different world. To abort the unborn from our past and our present and from our future is a very, very unwise practice and can have disastrous consequences for mankind. Okay, now let's speak about a more recent story that was in the news, in the media, and that is about a Virginia abortion bill, which is also supportive of abortion right up to the point of birth. This apparently, from what I've been able to gather, this was started by Delegate Kathy Tran. The previous standard was safe, legal, and rare. And now we have moved away from that, obviously. Now they have obviously left that standard behind and have moved to outright infanticide. In my Awful Truth About Voting video, I speak of a no-harm rule. Religion is held to a no-harm rule. So in other words, they're saying, okay, well, if you're going to have, they always point to things like this. They say, well, in the past, various religions around the world have practiced human sacrifice and have done other things that people found objectionable. And they says, well, we're going to hold you religious people to a no-harm rule. You know, you can believe in God, but you can't cause any harm. The right to life should be respected and given the sanctity that it should receive. Where is the no harm rule in what we are seeing now with these abortion laws that are going far beyond the original standard? This has gone far beyond the first trimester considerations and arguments of Roe versus Wade, which came about in 1973. As I go through this issue, I also wrote in my previous treatise, and I stand by the following: do not attack abortion physicians and do not attack abortion clinics. I understand why you are upset with the Roe versus Wade decision, supra, and I agree with abortion being wrong, but you must not appoint yourself judge, jury, and executioner. Every person, no matter how much you may believe that they deserve what they get, has the right to due process of law, whether in this life or before the final authority, which is God. Due process is critical to us all. You do not hold the office of judge, jury, and executioner rolled up into one, and you are not God. If I could stop abortion without violence and do so legally, Given our present legal realities, I would. What about the argument that the expectant mother should have control over her own body? This is what I wrote about that. That was also considered in the Roe v. Wade court, and issues of right to privacy and personal liberty were addressed. But, my friends, we must squarely face the fact that when a woman is pregnant, we are not dealing with just her own body. We are dealing with another human body growing inside the mother's body. Thus, my mathematical calculations, there are two bodies present, and in the fact pattern of the issues before us, that has to be considered. It may well be argued that a human being should have charge over just their own bodies, but when we have another human life and body present, through no fault of its own, should the mother have absolute life and death rights and powers over another life? I say that the answer is clearly no. I have already stated herein, termination of such innocent unborn life must be avoided in the absence of a truly justifiable set of facts and circumstances. So much for the right over our own body argument. Again, I'm reading from some of the things I wrote in the treatise, and I think I need to go through this so you get a good picture of what all of this is really about. The case of Roe v. Wade was decided in 1973, and by a 7-2 decision affirmed a woman's right to have an abortion under the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. It declared previous laws which criminalized and restricted access to abortion, which were common in the United States, unconstitutional. Supreme Court Justice Harry Blackmun wrote the majority opinion of the court. Justice Byron White was the senior dissenting judge, with Justice Rehnquist joining in the dissent. The following encapsulates the foundation for their dissenting opinions. Justice White and Rehnquist wrote emphatic dissenting opinions. White wrote, "I find nothing in the language or history of the Constitution to support the court's judgment. The court simply fashions and announces a new constitutional right for pregnant women, and with scarcely any other reason or authority for its action, invests that right with sufficient substance to override most existing state abortion statutes. The upshot is that the people and the legislatures of the 50 states are constitutionally disentitled to weigh the relative importance of the continued existence and development of the fetus on the one hand against the spectrum of possible impacts on the woman on the other hand. As an exercise of raw judicial power, the court perhaps has the authority to do what it does today." It says that here, but I don't agree with that. They don't have the authority. But in my view, its judgment is improvident and extravagant exercise of the power of judicial review that the Constitution extends to this court. White asserted that the court values the convenience of the mother more than the continued existence and development of the life or potential life that she carries. Though he suggested that he might agree with the court's values and priorities, he wrote that he saw no constitutional warrant for imposing such an order of priorities on the people and legislatures of the states. White criticized the court for involving itself in the issue of abortion by creating a constitutional barrier to state efforts to protect human life, and by investing mothers and doctors with the constitutionally protected right to exterminate it. He would have left the issue, for the most part, with the people and the political processes the people have devised to govern their own affairs. Rehnquist elaborated on several of White's points, asserting that the court's historical analysis was flawed. To reach its result, the court necessarily has had to find within the scope of the 14th Amendment a right that was apparently completely unknown to the drafters of the amendment. As early as 1821, the first state law dealing with abortion was enacted by the Connecticut legislature. By the time of the adoption of the 14th Amendment in 1868, there were at least 36 laws enacted by state or territorial legislatures limiting abortion. While many states have amended or updated their laws, 21 of the laws on the books in 1868 remain in effect today. That was, of course, in 1973. My friends, I believe the dissenting opinions fairly well establishes that, in fact, the court just created a new decisional case precedent law by a majority vote of justices, which is largely the product of raw judicial power gone wrong. It is also known as judicial activism. The courts across the nation are sworn upon oath to uphold the U.S. Constitution, which contains no such right to terminate an innocent unborn human life. Nor does the court really have the power to grant life and death powers over an innocent unborn human fetus to the mother. The U.S. Supreme Court is supposed to and is not supposed to and is not empowered to twist and turn the Constitution upon its head so that it can do whatever it wants regardless of what some faction of the citizenry may desire and create new case laws which the Constitution does not in fact contain, empower, or support, with a magic judicial wand which miraculously declares such laws constitutional. Power and might does not make right. I remember when in 1973 the court declared this decision, how so many people who believed in God and in the Bible, including my own father, Pastor Michael Benjamin Sr., could not believe what the court had done and that such a thing happened in these United States. We, as people who had come to this country believing with all our hearts that this was a nation under God, were simply astounded and disillusioned. I was in the U.S. Army at the time in 1973. Since we're addressing law, I would like to point out for those that believe in God and His Word that the killing of innocent unborn human lives without absolute justification before God, which an erroneous Supreme Court decision of man does not qualify as, is a violation of one of the 10 Commandments, specifically, thou shalt not kill. As I have said many times before, and I will support it in my Facebook posts and articles, the 10 Commandments are still in full force and effect under the New Covenant. That's under my teachings on grace and law, by the way. And I've written, I'll just mention this real quick, I've written a 12-part treatise on grace and law, which is available at my Facebook sites. Let me continue with what I had said and written here. How grievous is the killing of innocent unborn human lives before God? I have in my time contemplated many sinful and wrong acts and omissions that mankind might perpetrate and engage in. Without doubt, the government-sanctioned killing of such innocent unborn lives is right at the top of abominations before our sovereign God. And because it has been decided and allowed by government decree, my friends, we can expect and we already are beginning to observe that God's national blessing upon these United States and by extension upon a disobedient world will become glaringly absent. I say to you all who may read what I have written here, turn from your ungodly ways and return unto God and His truth. For God has not failed to see what we have done and what we are still doing, and He shall remember our iniquities that have reached unto heaven. We should be aware that many of our inherent and inalienable rights will become the target of encroachment. At first, as with the right of self-protection and the keeping and bearing of arms, people will claim that they're not out to take away our right of self-protection and our weapons. They will point to the interim measures such as firearm safety classes, gun registration, permits and licenses, lower capacity magazines, background checks, assault weapons classification, ammunition access restrictions, waiting periods, limitations related to firearms, semi-automatic weapon exclusion, and the like. And they'll say, well, these are measures that we're going to do. This is to protect the public and all that. And they're going to say, we're not out to, I've heard them say it. You've probably heard them say it too. They'll say, well, we're not out to take your weapons away. We don't want to make it so that you can't protect yourself. We're just having to take these measures because that's just what we got to do. Well, I say to you, don't believe them. Don't believe them. That's not what they're doing. Here's what I wrote after that. But just as the abortion narrative and standard has changed for the worse to what it is now, which is point of birth termination of life, that's where, they started out with a much less grievous standard for abortion. Now we're at point of birth termination of life. You see how it progressed? Okay, so too will it progress with the self-protection rights and the right to keep and bear arms, eventually to a point essentially equivalent to non-existence of such rights. It is nothing less than incremental denial of and removal of our inherent rights. One of those inherent rights, of course, is the right to life. And a human in the womb also has a right to life. They're just not paying much attention to that. Now they want to terminate. I say terminate, that's a nice way of saying now they want to kill these infants right up to the point of birth. That is abomination beyond belief. I can't even understand how we can go there. I can't understand how a reasonable mind who understands the importance and sanctity and importance of life can even come to that position where they would do something like that. Now, if we go on to say, okay, well, when it comes to guns, we'll just let them have that one. Okay, let's do these interim measures. Maybe not all of them. We'll do just only some of them. The problem is when you appease people like that, you come to the rule that appeasement just makes the aggressor more aggressive. And we have to really put a stop to some of this ungodly, unwise, and unwarranted legislation that's coming down the pike. They're not only doing things that are wrong in the legislative sense. In New York, they were celebrating it. They were saying they hailed it as just as something to be proud of. It's not something to be proud of. Since when did the Supreme Court have the power to grant to the mother to kill babies? Since when did they have that? Where does that power come from? It's not anywhere in the law that I know of. It's, you know what it is? It's the legalization of criminality. One of the worst criminalities is the killing of unborn innocent babies. That's criminality to a degree that it's really difficult for me to fathom. I hope you feel the same way. I hope you're not celebrating, like some people are, that this has occurred. This world is on its way to its own destruction if it doesn't catch itself soon and say, we've got to stop this. We've got to stop thinking like this. We got to start thinking right. Like I said, I'm not going to make this too long. I want you to know how I feel. Maybe you can tell I'm a little bit upset about it. Maybe you can tell that I really, really, really don't like it. And if there was a way that I could stop it without violence, I certainly would. I do not, I want you to know, I say again, I'll reiterate, I do not believe that any of the things that I've said here tonight allow you to attack abortion clinics or allow you to attack abortion physicians or anything like that. I want to be clear on that. I know it has happened in the past, and I do not condone it, and I do not support it. I believe that we have to find another way to correct this problem. We have to find another way to be heard. We have to find another way to bring sanity back into the world. Okay, I'm going to stop this right here. This recording will show up on Facebook, and it will show up on YouTube. Thank you for your attention to this matter. This has been Pastor Mike of the Investment in Truth Review saying take care, best wishes, and as applicable, God bless.